is an easy 10 out of 10 for me. This card is basically perfect when I think about like flavorful, interesting, and engaging new types of cards. Hello everyone and welcome to another custom cards video. I am The Skilled Roy and today I'm going to be reviewing some really awesome new cards. All these cards come from the Discord or the subreddit for custom LOR, so please go check them out. There's a lot of great people there who do some absolutely incredible work. Honestly, some of these are some of my favorites I've seen yet, and probably overall my highest scoring episode yet, so stay tuned, but here we go. Custom card video begin. Okay, and first up we have the 2-mana 1/2 bloodthirsty basilisk in Noxus. It has Challenger and Strike, give me +2/+1 this round, and support, I strike my supported ally. Oh man, I really do love this card a lot. This is made by Revlid. It's an absolutely incredible concept for a multitude of reasons. First things first, in Noxus, the ability to strike your own allies is something that I've been sort of pitching for a very long time, because I think that's something that makes way too much sense for the region, because that will allow you to have smaller units be able to sort of activate, so to speak, your Crimson units or your survive damage effects that are in Noxus. But not only that, but clearly a lot of Noxian cards already care about striking, such as Draven, for example, that can then hypothetically increases its speed up of its level up. Now, of course, this is only self-referential. It's the only card that strikes here, so it's going to be getting the bonus of +2/+1, which means that typically when this attacks, it's going to be attacking as a 3/3 challenger, assuming, of course, that you have support and you're doing some damage to it to begin with. The question really is this balanced when you are doing that? Compared to the other prolific 2-mana challenger within Noxus, which is the 5/1 can't block challenger, Glory Seeker. And like that to me is probably consistently more powerful than this is. This is really powerful, but you do need a turn 1 play, and you do need the ability to activate it, and you do need the ability to like, there's so many things that go sort of stack on top of each other for this card to be good. And on top of that as well, like, it's not like it keeps those stats either here, right? Because like when it's attacking you now, it's going to be when they are attacking you, it's going to be a 1/2 challenger, and that's basically irrelevant. It might as well have can't block on it as well, because you're never going to be blocking with this. I am really happy with this, how the sequencing of this card works. I really love how it interacts, and I love how it's both like a setup card for like, say, the Scars deck, as well as it also allows it to trade evenly. This is like, it's almost like a side grade to Glory Seeker, but it's better in the decks that really care about self-damage, but it's worse in decks that you don't. So in many ways, it's kind of interesting, right? Because this card is almost perfectly suited for where I want it on the balance curve, right? It's a card that's better in the decks that want it, and it's worse in the decks that aren't. And I feel like that's ideal for these sort of synergy effects, you know what I'm saying? So overall, I think the design of this card is really good. The whole theme of Basilisk as flavorfully doing self-damage has already been proven with the recent edition, which does 4 damage to both sides. Like, the uncontrollable nature of the Basilisk is sort of like a part of their wheelhouse, so to speak. So I think that's really cool right off the bat. I also really like how it synergizes really well with the current themes within Noxus, while still allowing for some crossover with other regions, such as, let's say, Demacian tough units, which don't care about the damage, or Freljord units, which care about getting damage, right? So those are all really solid. And on top of that, I think it's just a really cool card conceptually. So I think for design, I'm going to give it a solid 5. I think it's super good design, and I think it's really creative and really cool. Now, execution. Execution is where things get a little odd for me. I'm not sure how I feel about it consistently powering up to 3/3. I understand it's probably fine. I do truly understand that. I think the main issue I'm going to really have with this card is that as a 3/3, naturally, you're going to want to be trading this into 2/1s and 2/2s and 2/3s, which means it'll end up being with 1 health at the end of it. But then the Basilisk can then consistently keep healing itself because of how the health buff works. In a weird way, I'm almost wondering, is this card better when you have the strike +2/+0 and it's a 1/3, and then that way you don't keep healing? I have to wonder. I'm not sure if I'm overthinking this too much, but it's a genuine consideration on my part, where I'm just like, I'm not sure how I feel about it constantly being able to heal and stay alive. Because remember, after it strikes the other unit, it's also going to gain 1 health after that as well. So in total, it's going to end up with having 4 health at the end of it trading, which means that it'll most likely be back at its usual stats page spread again. and that seemed a little crazy to me at times. Overall though, I think the card is executed extremely well. The concept and the idea of having the support strike effect is really, really cool. You could probably make an argument for the strike to be a skill instead, so that people can then respond to it. But honestly, it doesn't really matter, so I don't think it's that big of an issue. Overall though, again, because my small issue with how the health gain sort of works, I don't really want to give it a 5, but I'm definitely gonna give it a 4. And I think this final score is going to be a 9 out of 10. Very, very great card by Revlid. Easily one of my favorites I've seen designed in terms of the striking my ally effects. This is really, really cool, and I really, really appreciated it. Now, I really hope that we can sort of see more of this in the future, because this sort of effect is like, it's a gold mine for design space. So thank you so much for this. I think it's one of my favorite designs I've seen yet. We next have Phantom Vaults, the 4 mana 2/4. Play, I capture a unit that costs 5 or less from your hand. So I think this one is very interesting. I think right off the bat, the design space of capturing being a negative is really cool, and the ability to cheat someone out by sort of playing them ahead of schedule with the Phantom Vault is really cool. It's really great that this specifically notifies a cost on the card. This means you can't cheat out like Aurelion Soul with it, for example. But overall, it's very, very interesting. The weird thing with this card, though, is that I would actually like to know to what extent does it interact with certain effects. I do like it a lot. I just have to wonder, how badly can we break this? You know what I mean? And I think that's really fun and really engaging to sort of have a card that makes you really want to sort of find ways to break it. I think the obvious one is getting the Crocodile out of this, right? You play 4 mana, 2/4, you capture the Crocodile, this 2/4 dies, you summon the 7/7 Crocodile. That all makes sense to me, and that makes logical sense. But one really interesting part of this is that this opens up design space for cards that have negative play effects that normally would be downsided. So for example, a lot of the Bilgewater units, even though they're on the lower end right now, they all have the ability to enter the board state damaged. But if you were to capture them with Phantom Vaults, when the Phantom Vaults eventually dies, it will then pop out the unit, and the unit will then now be alive, so to speak. Now, I think the true downside of this effect is that as a location, it does feel a little odd that not only is it capable of blocking, but it's a 2/4. Perhaps reflavoring this card as like a jailer, or like a Thresh's Underlings, for example, right? Or someone who's taking after Thresh in terms of like the imagery of a Shadow Isles character. I think those are probably a lot better, because the issue with it right now, it does feel like it's like a landmark that is somehow able to attack and block me. And I think that is unfortunately a knock against its flavor, because I think the conceptual level of it is really cool. Overall, I think design-wise, I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 5. I think it's really, really solid. I think my main issue with it is really just the flavor. It does feel odd that the vaults are blocking me. Of course, people will quote the stones, the wording stones from Freljord, and how they're capable of blocking. But not only was that made in a time before landmarks, but also like I can give it a bit more credence, because that was created before we had a design type that worked for this. Now, obviously, this one would not work as a landmark because of how the issues of it work, but I really don't feel like it makes sense for it to be capable of attacking, at least. I do like how it's around as a unit, because there's so much more unit destruction interaction, such as things such as the Ephemeral from Stalking Shadows, Chronicler of Ruin, all sorts of these other cards. The issue is really just going to come down to the fact that the flavor of it just doesn't really hit right for me, and I think it could be better as a person, ghost person who's holding on to like a cage or something like that. You know, I think there's a lot of art for that, so I think that's probably where I would go with this. Now, execution-wise, I think this is really, really solid. The cost reduction, the cost maximum there is perfect for allowing it to make sure that there isn't anything that you can really break with this. I think truly the main thing is really going to be able to watch out for cards that have downsides that you can now dodge. So for example, the Crocodile is a big one. A lot of the Bilgewater units that when they enter the board, they enter damage is a big one. I almost, in a weird way, almost want this to have a better ability on top of it. It's really hard to say though. Like, for example, you could really easily just have it be, when I'm summoned, capture the weakest unit in your hand. The weakest unit that costs 5 or less in your hand, because that way then you can get some more synergies with it, like being brought back to life from all the reassembly effects that Shadow Isles has, such as Chronicler of Ruin and things similar to that. So that's one small bias on my part. I do like how this curves right into Emitter, because you really want to get rid of this card because it's very understated. Even if you get the good cheat out, it's still not going to be very good. So I think that's really cool. Like I said, execution-wise, there's a lot of really great interactions here. So I'm also going to give this a solid 4 out of 5. Really great work on this one as well. I think this was a really, really solid card, and I think the design space for capture, cheating is really, really nice. I like it a lot. It works in many, many ways. I just think there's a bit more that can be done for the flavor, and I do think there could be a bit more to make it a bit more playable. Those are my two big things, but overall, really great stuff and great design on this one, Vane. I really appreciated this. Okay, next up we have the 3-mana 3/3 Loneshark. It's in Bilgewater and it has play, grant an enemy +1/+1, and when it dies, grant me +3/+3. Oh man, so full disclosure, guys, I love the card Ye Been Warned. I think it's very clever. I think it adds a lot of really interesting counterplay to the game. And I think it's really great to have these sort of called shot cards where you're like, both you and the opponent are aware of your objective and you're both trying to play around it happening or not. In this case, Loneshark, of course, when he enters the board, is going to empower and put a target, so to speak, on an opponent's card. And then suddenly now your goal is to make sure that thing somehow dies. Now, given how much vulnerable support is in Bilgewater, I think this is perfect for it to not have any way to do it itself. You'll often hear me complain about cards that have things like they have issues activating a kill effect or activating an effect that they can't really do themselves. And Loneshark realistically will almost never kill that unit on his own, right? Because of course the enemy is not going to block Loneshark, because why would they even risk giving you the +3/+3? But the thing is though, in Bilgewater you have so much access to vulnerable. You have so much access to other effects such as burn spells in the region as well. Like, it's almost impossible to imagine that Loneshark wouldn't eventually be around to witness the death of that unit. There's perhaps an argument where you could say that it doesn't make much flavorful sense that he's unable to. He isn't the one who has to go kill the unit himself, but in many ways you could see it more as him getting help or hiring people to collect for him. I think there's a lot of really interesting things you could hypothetically do with it. Overall, I think the concept is perfect within Bilgewater. I think flavorfully, obviously, it's a great pun. Come on, let's not joke about this. We know this pun is good. Come on, it makes sense flavorfully with the card effect. It makes sense with everything else around the design. It's a 3-mana 3/3, so it's slightly underpaced compared to the cards such as Badger Bear and stuff like that, which are 3-mana 3/4s, or the 3-mana 4/3 Overwhelm and Noxus. So inherently, not only that, but it also gives the +1/+1 to the opponent first. And in most situations, unless you're storing spell mana or have something already ready to set it up, they are most likely going to get the first usage of that bonus stats. So in many ways, this is actually a 3-mana 2/2 that eventually then becomes a 3-mana 5/5, but you have to work for it. And so in a weird way, it's getting closer to some other designs in Bilgewater, which is like the Hunting Fleet, and cards similar to that, because it's basically a downside card that you can work with to make it an upside card. And I think that's really cool. I think that's really conceptually really awesome. I could definitely see this being run in like an Undying deck, for example, with something that already has a lot of vulnerable, or a deck that already has a lot of ways to trade. And overall, I'm really impressed with this card. I think the design for this card is an easy 5 out of 5. Absolutely incredible design. I think it's truly one of my favorite designs I've ever seen. I hate this. I really do. Because MOS Banapple, he's gotten a perfect score from me before, right? I hate to keep doing this to him. I really do. This is not favoritism. I genuinely really love this card. I think it's very clever and I think it works perfectly. Execution-wise, I'm just gonna say it. This is a 5 out of 5 execution for me. This is a card that is perfectly situated in this region. It's interesting. It's conceptually like makes you want to figure out how to break it. It makes you want to. It makes you think so much about the game in terms of like what you can hypothetically do with it. And I think that alone makes it such a really great design for me. Not only just from execution, but also the design of it. It's just. I love this card so much. I really do. It's just really, really nice. Overall, though, thank you so much for this design. This is an easy 10 out of 10 for me. This card is basically perfect when I think about like flavorful, interesting, and engaging new types of cards. It also like promotes some form of interactivity between the two players as they both try to fight over this unit dying. There's just many, many ways you can make this card interesting. The one thing in particular I really enjoyed was that the bonus is not guaranteed. So for example, if the opponent kills your Loneshark, and then eventually that other unit dies, you're not getting any benefit anymore. You have to protect this Loneshark in the same way that they have to protect their unit. And I think that to me is where the design really sort of gives it the extra edge where I think I really enjoy it. Because at that point, now it's a bit more fair for both players. One thing I really don't like about, say, something that marks something, and then no matter whenever it dies, you're gonna get a bonus, is that it's less of a interaction point and more of an inevitability, right? So like if I had a card that says, oh, when this unit dies, I draw a card, it's eventually going to die, right? But in this case, there's almost like a timer where it's them trying to kill your Loneshark and you're trying to kill their unit that you've marked. I think that's really, really cool. Great Great work with this one, MOS. It's amazing. Thank you. Okay, next up we have AKALI, a 3-mana 2/2 with elusive. When allies attack, create a shuriken flip in hand. Her level up progress is you've targeted AKALI for recall 2+ times. Then her level up, she turns into the 3/3 of elusive. And then when allies attack, summon me from hand attacking and create a shuriken flip in hand. Now, of course, shuriken flip is a 2-mana fast spell with fleeting. When it says AKALI strikes an enemy and then recall her. Overall, really, really cool card. There's a lot of really interesting things you can do with this. AKALI, of course, is a unit that is very, very aggressive. This is very much similar to an elusive recall lord, which makes a lot of sense given how many of the Navori elusive recall sort of semi-effects that there actually are in the game currently with Blade Scout as well as the Conspirator. I think this is really, really interesting. I mean, obviously right off the bat, we know that the 3-mana 2/2 elusive stat line is pretty decent. Shadow Assassin used to have it. I mean, of course, Shadow Assassin also draws you a card, so there's a bit of a difference there. But I do think that this stat line is pretty aggressive and really solid. Not to mention, she also has a built-in way to protect herself with Shuriken Flip, as it allows her to easily get in and out of combat very simply, as well as fuel her level up meter as well. I think truly the most interesting part of AKALI's design here is really going to be the fact that it works extremely well and is extremely hard to stop and target her. Basically, as you're playing as AKALI here, there's almost no situation where AKALI can really realistically ever be attacked on her attacking turns. Basically, she can attack in, she's completely elusive, so there's basically no way to block her. But even if they do have something like, say, the spell that lets you block elusives, or some sort of removal spell, or some sort of thing like it, then you can easily Shuriken Flip her and get her out of the combat. Another thing to mention, by the way, is on Shuriken Flip, it says AKALI strikes an enemy and then recalls her, as opposed to it requiring her to strike, which means that frostbites don't even stop her either. In general, it really does feel like AKALI has a billion ways to stay safe. And the main issue I'm really seeing here is that Shuriken Flip is a consistently powerful removal spell that allows her to basically kill whatever she likes consistently. That's all the things I'm talking about with the power level of her. Of course, on the defensive side, if she did not get her recall off, or let's say the opponent doesn't have something for you to strike, and you simply just attack with AKALI and then they play a challenger unit next turn, you have to have another way to get her out of harm's way. Now, of course, she is at the 3-mana range, so this is obviously in ranges for Return, this is in ranges for Recall, this is in ranges for Conspirator, all cards of which are already in her region and already make sense for her to be using, and I think that's really solid. One thing I also really like is how the hand buff cards also work really well with AKALI as well. Because of her Shuriken Flip, she's always going to be able to do bonus damage with that Shuriken Flip above 2, because 2 is a mystic shot, right? What she really does here is that when allies attack, she creates a mystic shot. That obviously doesn't hit hand, it doesn't hit face, obviously, and obviously there's a much more criteria to that. Basically, that's what it is. But as with hand buffs, it becomes more powerful and lets you do a lot more off of that. I am a little concerned with how this sort of interacts overall with how aggressive she can be. Scout units, obviously, what's going to happen with scout units is that AKALI will then enter the board on the first attack, do the damage, and since the scout trigger activates at the start of the attack phase, she will effectively be allowed to participate within a scout attack and then bounce her with a Shuriken Flip and then attack again, and then she'll come back into the board state again. I think right off the bat, design-wise, flavorfully, this is not only perfect for her as a character, but also perfect to what she acts in League of Legends as a game. Her weaving in and out of combat consistently is exactly what her sort of combat pattern is in League of Legends, and I think that is a perfect choice there. It makes so much sense thematically and like cohesively with her character that I almost want to say this is probably what she's going to be. It makes a lot of sense for her to be the recall in, recall out, recall in, recall out type of character, right? And I think that's really, really cool. I do think there are some considerations that she might still be too strong and really hard to stop, because you're only really going to be playing her on the board if you're playing smart on your attacking turns, and you're going to keep her in your hand on your defending turns. This means that she's really hard to interact with and effectively stop, and that's, to me, a little concerning. So it is a little spooky and I'm a little scared for it, but overall, I really like the design specifically. So let's talk design score. I think that's an easy 5 for me. The design here makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of really great stuff to love here. I think it's really, really great, and I think it works so well for connecting a lot of different parts of Ionia's kits, as well as giving us a sort of side grade to Zed, right? Because Zed is going to be much more powerful and hitting really much harder, but this is a more elusive, so so to speak, unit where you can basically get in and out of combats and be a lot safer rather than Zed, who dies very easily. Now, execution-wise, there's a couple things I need to mention. Execution-wise, when you attack with AKALI for her level up, the first AKALI will hit the board, and then immediately all other AKALIs in your hand will transform into her champion spell, which means that the other 2 AKALIs in your hand, hypothetically if you had 3 in your hand, would not enter the board attacking, and they wouldn't generate additional shuriken flips. And that's totally fine, that makes a lot of sense. But the one big point here against execution is that Lazy unfortunately submitted this with no champion spell. So Shuriken Flip is not a champion spell, it's just a spell that she generates and it's completely non-collectible. So she would also need, on top of this, a spell that also did something. So unfortunately that is going to be a point against him in the execution range because she needs some sort of champion spell. And the design isn't really complete until that sort of thing happens. So unfortunately I'm going to have to do a small mark against it on that. And I also don't think that the balance of the card is completely fair either. Again, I have a lot of concerns with it being completely untouchable. I think the biggest thing for me personally would be to make Shuriken Flip require the strike, because this means that the opponent could then kill their own unit or frostbite AKALI in order to force her to stay on the board. As it is now, she's very, very hard to realistically respond to because she'll always have the advantage going into the combat step. That's probably my personal biggest gripe. You're gonna be recalling her anyway, so she's always gonna be in a degree of safety, and I'm very concerned that Shuriken Flip can allow you to basically have a 2-mana deny consistently on AKALI. And it really feels like I like it. I like where the design space for that goes, but I definitely do think that it needs some form of ability to stop it. Again, frostbites or requiring the target to actually be struck are the 2 big ones for me. Overall though, I think the design is really great. I think it commits on a lot of really great parts of it. And again, the execution of the idea of having this in and out champion, perfect. All that stuff works incredibly well. And I think that's almost undeniable for most people. I think overall, I'm gonna give it, again, because it didn't have a champion spell, and again, because I do have some issues with it being completely untouchable, I think I'm gonna give it a 3. I think overall it's really, really solid. With a champion spell would be a 4. I think there's just some small balance considerations that I personally would make just to make sure that this has some ability to get touched, because it's never going to be on the board during the opponent's attacking turn, and on your attacking turn it feels a little bit immortal. And I think those are the 2 things to sort of watch out for. Overall though, really, really cool champion design. I think the biggest thing here is how it really, really brings across what AKALI's like, how she acts in gameplay, but not being like a translation card. Too many times do I see people create champions that are trying to bring across how they play in League of Legends, but they're just like almost translating the mechanics over. And this one, it's like spiritually, you can tell it's AKALI. Like when you see this effect and you're like, name a League champion that this could be, it's basically AKALI, right? So I think that alone is a huge accomplishment. I think that's easily the best part of this design, and great work on that, because that's my the biggest part I love about this. So again, thank you so much to Lazy for making this. It was an amazing card. Thank you so much for this. All right, and that is it for this week. Thank you so much everyone for watching. For those of you who don't know, again, these are coming from the subreddit and Discord, so please go check us out at our custom LOR and then join the community Legends of Runeterra Discord to come check us out and discuss custom cards, because honestly a lot of these are really, really awesome. If you have any cards that you want to get submitted to the show and see them reviewed next week or whenever I do the next video, please DM them to me on Discord or check out my email in the description of this video. A lot of people, I'm sure, can attest to me having taken stuff from there, and I'll be sure to talk to you about some thoughts and stuff like that. Now, of course, if you just have some cards you want to get like checked by me and not reviewed, but rather just have my general opinion on, put them into a nice little like image together, make sure they're all relatively decently formatted, and I'll do my best to take a look at them and give you my general advice. There is the main thing for me, honestly, though, is that you guys know that this is just my opinion. These are obviously all cards that are really, really cool, and people put a lot of really great work into them. So I want you guys to make sure that, hey, I might be wrong on these cards. They might be completely wrong. That my perfect scores might be 0s. My 3s might be 10s, you know? Like, it's who knows really, right? So your opinion is just as valid as mine. Please, if you want to rate your own cards, please, I encourage you, rate these cards as well in the comments below. That'd be really cool. But otherwise though, one last thing, guys, I just want to let you know, so I'm also streaming on Twitch. You can find me at twitch.tv/theskilledroy. I will be streaming there basically semi-occasionally whenever new cards and new stuff comes out, and I'll be doing my best to sort of do that a bit more when I'm not super busy with work. But yeah, anyways, I think that's mostly it for me. Like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, all that good stuff. You know how it is. But anyways, I will catch you guys next time. Peace out.